Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation on the AWS Migration Acceleration Program. My name is Ryan Freilino, and I lead strategic accounts for Logicworks. So I've spent the past 8 years helping customers get to the public cloud, optimize existing public cloud footprints, and take advantage of our operational support services. Take a look at today's agenda. We're going to start with a little bit about Logicworks, and then we're going to talk about the AWS Migration Acceleration Program, what it is and why you would use it. We're going to look at the process itself via two different customer perspectives that I think are the right frame of reference to understand where the different phases of this program come in and how you can put them to use. So with that, let's get started. So Logicworks is the industry leader in platform-driven cloud consulting, migration, and operations for AWS and Azure. We're recognized by AWS, Gartner, and other industry analysts as one of the most highly credentialed and highly capable partners in the global ecosystem. And our focus is on helping customers accelerate time to cloud, enable high security and governance, and successfully scale as their business needs evolve. When we think about how we got here, we take a platform-driven approach to everything we do. We bring 25 years of experience and advanced AWS certified specialists to each engagement with our customers. That approach is backed by our cloud reliability platform, which is designed to leverage automation, tooling, and telemetry to operate your cloud at scale. And we were a very early adopter of AWS, and over the last decade, we've migrated hundreds of customers to the cloud, and our migration practice is a result of everything we've learned over that time. So when you think about the services that we provide every day, it breaks down to migrations, managed services, app modernization, and security. And as I mentioned, all of this is supported by our cloud reliability platform. So that's the context that we have and our focus coming into this presentation and our experience with the Migration Acceleration Program. So thinking about that, the Migration Acceleration Program itself is based on the overwhelming evidence that customers achieve better outcomes by leveraging partners compared to migrating themselves. It's designed to validate partners in terms of their ability to execute. AWS does a great job of vetting our capabilities based on talking to our customers after we've migrated them and ensuring we keep customer obsession above all else. It also provides a structure to the migration process based on methods and processes that are proven to be successful, looking at hundreds and hundreds of cloud migrations. It's also the most lucrative funding program in the ecosystem. So using an experienced partner to produce high quality work costs money. We all know that. So the MAP program is how AWS steps up to invest in your success and offset our costs. And perhaps most importantly, it's designed to accelerate your migration process. One of the most important risk factors to migration is cost overrun due to missed migration schedules. We see this happen all the time. So as you're migrating, you're paying duplicative costs for your current infrastructure and your new AWS infrastructure. So by using MAP, you're addressing what is essentially the primary risk from an economic perspective. So if you're a customer, why use MAP? And when we think about this, we've learned a lot along the way of migrating hundreds of customers to the cloud. And so during that time, we've refined our framework to include processes that ensure we minimize risk and maximize velocity. There's really no need for you as an individual organization to learn the hard and painful lessons that can come along with complex migrations. We've learned them and we can help you avoid them. What that means for you is, decreased financial and technical risk, improved accuracy of cost forecasting, shorter time to migration completion. We can also help you maximize funding to offset your actual migration costs and maximize the cost optimization of the resulting cloud environment, and establish operational excellence at the outset. More often than not, surprisingly, this is an afterthought, but it's something we bake into the process itself, both in terms of the planning as well as the actual ongoing execution. So from a customer perspective, there's really two frames of reference that are super helpful to think about with respect to MAP. And this ties to where customers are in their cloud adoption journey. The first sort of use case is a customer that needs to answer the question of how and why should we invest in cloud. The second use case is you understand the benefits and you need to actually execute an at-scale complex migration. So we're going to look at these two use cases and show you how the Migration Acceleration Program helps address these two things. And the first phase of the Migration Acceleration Program is the Migration Readiness Assessment. So let's start there. Fundamentally, what you're trying to answer the question of how does the adoption of cloud technologies benefit your business? This is the thing that should be the primary driver of cloud adoption and cloud operations. The point here is that this isn't a purely technical exercise. The most successful cloud adoptions we've seen are actually driven by business-based outcomes, right? Are you trying to deploy faster? Are you trying to better protect your data? Are you trying to reach new regions in the globe? Are you trying to save money, right? All of these things, you need to establish the sort of confluence of your priorities with respect to your business. And then you can think about how do you approach those objectives? What are your current challenges from a technology perspective, from an organizational perspective? How do your costs change both to execute the migration itself and post-migration? What's the ROI going to look like? And what challenges might you have in terms of skill sets for your organization and things like that? So it's meant to take into view the broadest aperture to address your business needs. And that has to be put first and foremost above the sort of technical adoption methods. So at Logicworks, we have a well-refined process to help you analyze the strengths and weaknesses of your business, because you need to go into a migration with those with eyes wide open on those things. Typically, this takes us about 3 weeks. It's primarily driven by our solutions architecture team. We work directly with your team to go through an assessment process, looking at your current infrastructure, your OS and database licensing, and third-party licensing, reliability and cost efficiency, security and compliance, your executive buy-in, how you make decisions, total cost of ownership. We can look at that relative to on-prem. And then what we do is we produce a report that includes a number of perspectives that are important to take into account. And what this is doing is it's basically scoring you as a holistic organization across these perspectives of business, people, governance, platform, security, and operations. You can think of this as sort of like a menu of must-haves to make sure that you're prepared for moving to the cloud. So that's what the MRA is designed to do, help you answer that question, how and why should you invest in cloud technologies? What we have structured here is a utilization of the MAP program that makes this completely free for most customers. AWS provides up to $60,000 in funding for us to execute this, and it comes with all the consulting required to achieve this. The report that I just talked about, so you can get a detailed analysis, and we also roll that up into a final presentation of findings to stakeholders. For each customer, we work with them along the way to make sure that we are incorporating and capturing both the business and technical information that we need to sort of draw to the forefront a high-level migration plan and TCO and things like that. But what you get coming out of this is a report that says, given the objectives we've agreed upon, this is the high-level way that you should be migrating to the cloud, and this is what it's going to cost to get there, and this is what it's going to cost to operate once you're done. So you should have a complete financial picture, as well as a compass as to how this is going to impact your business ongoing. Okay, so let's say we've gone through this process, we've identified your goals in AWS, right? That's the first and most important thing. And your goals might be modernize platform and tools, improve your security, save money, and grow revenue. We see those all the time. And more importantly, we now understand, at least directionally, how those different objectives translate to your business and to your technology. What's next? This is where the second phase of the Migration Acceleration Program comes in. It's called the Mobilize phase. So the Mobilize phase in and of itself looks a little bit different for everybody, but the basic idea is we want to establish the prerequisites for cloud migration, right? The nice part about this phase is AWS provides a dollar-for-dollar match in your investment in Mobilize phase activities. So they're taking essentially 50% of the bill off the top. The common tasks that we see happen here are creation of a migration plan, refinement of your infrastructure design and business case. This is where we get into the lower level decision making around what particular technologies to use and how exactly to structure your AWS accounts versus your VPCs versus your security groups. What are your general patterns you're going to use? What's the general cadence we're going to use once we get to the sort of accelerated migration factory situation. We're also here to help make sure we're addressing any gaps in your organization's readiness that were uncovered in the MRA. So the MRA is a roadmap that also shows you where are you most prepared and where do you have some shortcomings that we need to address. And the Mobilize phase is meant to backfill those. During this process, we've got your design, your plan. We also then go and build your foundational or baseline environment. What this is the core elements that are required for you to move into the cloud. So you can think of things like shared services. You can think of things like security, identity and access management. You can think of basic networking, ingress and egress components. All of these things that every one of your applications is going to have to plug into and use in some way. We want to get those things ready for you so that when we get to the point of moving applications, that happens as quickly and efficiently as possible, and in a very standardized way. The other thing we want to do during the Mobilize phase is drive operational readiness. Typically, customers have two choices here. You can either get your teams on track with training to achieve a slew of certifications. We're going to look at what those look like later. Or you can hire somebody like Logicworks who can achieve operational excellence for you, right? But the point is we want to make sure that we not only get you to the cloud effectively, but during this initial planning and execution phase, we're actually setting you up for long-term success. Either path you choose, whether you're training your team or working with somebody like us, you're developing cloud skills and expertise along the way. Even when we're doing the lion's share of the design and the deployment of resources and the validation of those resources once they're deployed, we do that collaboratively with your team. We walk them through everything that we do, both before we build and after we deploy resources, so that your team can understand, like, how is it that your on-premise or non-AWS resources and their configurations and settings are actually tracking to AWS. How do we translate from point A to point B? So our job is to make sure you understand as much of that as possible. And again, it's funded by the AWS Migration Acceleration Program. Now, we've got your baseline in place. We've got all of your prerequisites and plan accomplished. Now it's time to actually migrate your applications. So during this phase, your applications are moved wholesale into AWS. There's a couple of different methods we can use to do that, but there's actually another tranche of funding that comes along with the activities we perform during this phase. And all of this is meant to offset the costs associated with migrating to the cloud. The calculation for that funding is based on 25% of the annual AWS usage resulting from your migration. So as you remember, in the migration readiness assessment phase, we've built out a TCO analysis, meaning we know what your operating costs are going to be, and therefore we can calculate what 25% of that annual usage is going to be, use that to offset the cost of migrating to and running in AWS. Now, for most customers with an application portfolio or even like a robust SDLC, we're not talking about just building one environment. We're talking about multiple environments and potentially multiple environments for multiple applications that look a little bit different. So what we do is we break these into groups of applications or migration waves. And for each wave, we go through a few different things during the process. The first step is a detailed design. We want to make sure that each of your resources are defined with high granularity so that we're standing up the right AWS resources. Our philosophy is measure twice, cut once, right? And I know that cloud is dynamic, and I know that cloud is iterative, and something that you can change over time. But the truth is, the more rework you can avoid, and the more problems you can avoid during application installation or application movement, the faster this is going to be. And the whole point here is to truncate the actual amount of time required to move you from not in the cloud to the cloud. So we take a little extra time to make sure we design this with high resolution. The next step is to move your actual applications. For most organizations, the fastest and most economical way to do this is to actually move applications as is, or we call it replatforming. Maybe we're using some native AWS services like RDS and ELB, the sort of low-hanging fruit. But we want to get you into the cloud And we'll talk about why in just a second. But generally speaking, we can use tools to sort of copy and paste workloads into the cloud. We can do net new installations of your applications on the latest operating systems and supporting packages and things like that. So depending on your application, there's going to be different ways that we move them into the cloud. We also take into account interdependencies between applications. So when we think about this concept of migration waves, we have to know what applications are talking to each other, what applications are dependent on functionality of each other in some way, and make sure that we group those and move them together so that we're not creating complex interdependencies between your AWS environment and your on-premise environment. And if we're not able to avoid them altogether, we'll at least work to minimize that in a way that's most amenable for your business. Once your applications are up and running, there's normally a testing period that needs to happen, right? This is a new environment with new configurations and settings. We've got to go through and test your applications for functionality, performance. We do a lot of destructive testing with our customers' environments to make sure that they're highly available, that resources can fail over to each other, or in a lot of cases that we've established automation to make these resources self-healing. There's a variety of other attributes that customers go through during the testing phase, and it's going to be unique depending on the types of applications we're talking about and your unique requirements. Last step is a go live, right? Once we've got everything up and running and we're able to test and validate that things work as they should, we can cut over to your new cloud environment. We go through that process with you to make sure that it goes smoothly and that if we need to, we've planned effectively for any kind of rollback that's required. And from there, you can start to decommission your old resources. So this is when we see those duplicative costs scale down. When we do this, typically we're doing it under the premise of having to move by a certain date. Most customers are moving to AWS from on-prem facilities, and they've got a term commitment with their data center provider or their managed service provider, and they're trying to avoid a renewal. And that's a super important point because it can become really complex and really costly if we go past those renewal dates for our customers, hence the need to focus on using a structured process and on accelerating that process in and of itself. So we plan accordingly and use well-worn methodologies to get you where you need to be. Lastly, once you're in the cloud, that's when we start the modernization process, meaning we're able to iterate your applications in a more cost-effective and flexible environment. This is really where the dynamic fluidity of cloud comes into play. We're able to, during the migration process, introduce tools, CI/CD tools to your cloud environment that allows you to deploy quicker, allows you to deploy with less risk, allows you to do things like spin down lower level environments when they're not in use outside of the 9 to 5 that your developers might be working, or spin environments or resources up and down based on set schedules or different automation. So what we're giving you is a way to sort of get to a cost-effective and well-structured cloud model, and then in parallel, increase your agility so that you can iterate your applications. And most businesses are seeing the benefits that they want by way of agility in the cloud, being able to introduce new features and applications into their portfolio to better service their customers. All of that, again, is subject to funding up to 25% of the annual AWS usage resulting from your migration. Now let's take a look at this from a customer point of view. Case study that we're going to walk through here is Nextgate. So Nextgate came to us with a need to modernize their application stack, and they're a software as a service provider. Typically their customers were installing their applications in on-premise facilities. They saw a huge customer demand to not have to do that anymore. Customers wanted to reduce the overhead associated with their IT footprints, and so they were looking to their vendors to offer a software as a service model. Now, in particular, Nextgate is the #1 provider of patient identity software in the United States. So they work with hospitals and healthcare providers to collect patient health records, consolidate them and index them to match people to their actual medical records. And so for them, what that means is each of their customer deployments is isolated. This is not a true multi-tenant stack. So what they needed to do is offer a SaaS platform on AWS that really reduces onboarding time for their customers, but also meets the scrutiny of large healthcare providers in terms of the security standards that they expect. And in this case, that was actually high trust. So what we were able to do with them is go through the assessment phase to understand what should your footprint look like, right? Well, we know that you're trying to minimize onboarding time, which means we need to minimize the effort of spinning up a new customer environment and getting them connected and migrated into that environment. We know that we need to increase standardization, so every customer environment should look relatively the same as every other customer so that they can be managed at scale. We know we need to do this in regions all over the world. We know that we also need to adhere to high trust and other healthcare standards. So they engaged us through the MRA to find out what that would look like, define things like what are our baseline costs for operating in AWS? What are our per customer incremental costs for running in AWS? What parts of our infrastructure and application deployment process can we automate so that we can minimize that effort and get customers up and running more quickly? What parts of our process can we automate to ensure we have the right security guardrails in place so that when we spin up these new environments with a greater velocity, we're also doing so with a lot more assurance in our security standards. And fast forward to today, they've got full production stack running on AWS in regions all over the world, hosting customers, and we were able to reduce their onboarding time from over a month to less than a week. And again, not only were we able to reduce that time, we were able to improve their security posture. We were able to get them through several now high trust certifications. And from an ongoing operations perspective, we also provide support. So they take advantage of our managed services, and we have a full suite of security services to support ongoing high trust certifications. Next thing I want to talk about is steady state operations. I mentioned at the top of this that this is generally an afterthought for most customers, but when you think about the cloud, a steady state operations is your longest lived portion of interacting with your cloud, meaning this is what's actually going to have the most effect on your business. It's really easy to get caught in the trap of just thinking about the migration itself because there's so many things to think about. It's new technology, so people are getting excited. There's generally executive attention on it, on getting from point A to point B on time and on budget. But what you don't want to do is have operational gaps, because that's going to kill your efficiency, either economically or from an agility perspective that you planned on getting in the first place. So if you think about what that means, for you, you've got to hire a team of experts that are able to monitor and respond to issues on a 24/7 basis. You need security folks with advanced specializations in security and networking to respond to security issues. And then you need DevOps engineers and solutions architects that are able to build new resources, add or modify or change configurations. And it turns out to be a fairly deep bench, and these can be relatively hard hills to climb if you're building out your team in and of itself. And so what we're able to provide is essentially access to a team of engineers at a more economic price point than you could build in-house. Moreover, and this is where it gets interesting and where most businesses see the most benefit, what we're able to do is take your folks and focus them on activities that are generating value for your business. Meaning they're not spending their time making sure things are backed up. They're not spending their time patching your instances, right? They're focused on things like feature innovation, things that are going to ultimately help you drive revenue with your customers, retain revenue with your customers, and we take all of the heavy lifting menial tasks off your plate and wrap around it a suite of automation to support your ongoing security needs. Here, we do that in a way that is highly customizable for all of our customers. We've got 3 packages. 2 of them are fully a la carte, but what we're able to do is mix and match the services you need to ensure you've got the right operational support to get you to your best long-term outcomes possible. And that's it. If you have any questions, go to logicworks.com, and we've got a form on there. You can reach out to talk to us more about the Migration Acceleration Program. Again, my name is Ryan Freilino. Thanks for joining us today, and best of luck in the future. Look forward to hearing from you.